Michael Williams stood in the doorway of his beautiful suburban home and stared at the people he once believed would always be there. His wife, Sarah, stood in the kitchen, quietly preparing dinner. His 17-year-old son, Ethan, sat at the table pretending to do homework. His 14-year-old daughter, Olivia, laughed softly at something on her phone. From the outside, they looked like the perfect American family. A beautiful home. A successful father. A loving mother. Two bright children with promising futures. Neighbors admired them. Friends envied them. People looked at their family photographs and assumed they had everything. But appearances can be deceiving. Inside that house, something important was slowly dying. And Michael was too proud to see it. At 46 years old, Michael had achieved nearly everything he had once dreamed about. He owned a successful construction company. He drove luxury vehicles. He traveled for business. He lived in a large home outside Chicago. The kind of home he used to point at when he was younger and say, "One day, that will be mine." And now it was. The problem was that somewhere along the way, he had forgotten why he wanted it in the first place. Years earlier, Michael had been a very different man. He wasn't wealthy. He wasn't powerful. He wasn't admired by business executives. He was simply a young husband trying to build a future. Back then, he worked long hours because he loved his family. He dreamed about giving Sarah a better life. He dreamed about providing opportunities for the children they hoped to have one day. Every sacrifice had a purpose. Every late night had meaning. Every difficult day felt worthwhile. Because family was at the center of everything. But success has a strange way of changing people when they aren't paying attention. The business grew. The contracts became larger. The money increased. The praise increased. People began treating Michael differently. Clients respected him. Competitors admired him. Business magazines featured his success. His phone never stopped ringing. His schedule never slowed down. And little by little, almost without realizing it, Michael began replacing his priorities. Family moved lower. Business moved higher. Every year his company grew. And every year his family received less of him. At first, Sarah understood. She remembered the difficult years. She remembered the tiny apartment. The overdue bills. The uncertainty. She remembered watching Michael work himself to exhaustion because he wanted a better future for all of them. So she was patient. She supported him. She encouraged him. She believed the sacrifices would eventually end. She believed that once they reached financial security, life would return to normal. But it never did. The more successful Michael became, the harder he worked. The harder he worked, the less available he became. Family dinners turned into conference calls. Weekend outings became business trips. Anniversaries became forgotten dates. Birthdays became expensive gifts delivered by someone else. Gradually, Sarah stopped feeling like a wife. She started feeling like an observer. Someone watching her husband disappear while standing right beside her. She tried talking to him. Many times. She explained how lonely she felt. She explained how much the children missed him. She explained that money couldn't replace presence. But Michael always responded the same way. He insisted he was doing everything for the family. The words sounded reasonable. Even noble. But over time, they became an excuse. An excuse that protected him from hearing the truth. One evening, after the children had gone upstairs, Sarah sat across from him at the dinner table. The room was quiet. The television was off. The dishes sat untouched. For a moment, neither spoke. Then Sarah finally said what had been weighing on her heart for years. She told him she felt like she was losing him. She told him the children hardly knew him anymore. She told him their family needed more than financial support. They needed his attention. His time. His presence. Michael listened. But he didn't hear her. Instead, he became defensive. He pointed to everything he had provided. The house. The cars. The vacations. The opportunities. In his mind, those things proved his love. But Sarah wasn't asking for proof of success. She was asking for connection. When the conversation ended, Michael walked away. That moment stayed with Sarah long after he left the room. Not because of what he said, but because of what he didn't say. There was no concern. No curiosity. No effort to understand. Only distance. For the first time in their marriage, she wondered whether the man she married still existed. Months passed. The emotional gap widened. Sarah stopped asking Michael to attend school events. She stopped reminding him about family activities. She stopped hoping he would suddenly change. The disappointment became too exhausting. Ethan noticed the change first. Teenagers often notice more than adults realize. One evening, he sat beside his mother on the back porch. The sun was setting. The neighborhood was quiet. He looked at her and immediately recognized the sadness behind her smile. Children know when their parents are hurting. Even when nobody says a word. Ethan knew his father was physically present less and less. But what hurt even more was realizing that his father seemed emotionally absent even when he was home. Promises became cancellations. Plans became excuses. Important moments came and went. Michael always had a reason. Always had a meeting. Always had a client. Always had somewhere else to be. Ethan tried not to let it bother him. But disappointment has a way of building over time. Like water filling a bucket one drop at a time. Eventually, the bucket overflows. Olivia felt it too. She adored her father when she was younger. She used to wait by the window for him to come home. She used to run toward the front door whenever she heard his car. Now she barely looked up when he arrived. Not because she stopped loving him. Because she stopped expecting him. That hurt even more. Children can survive disappointment. What changes them is when disappointment becomes normal. Then came the night everything changed. A Friday evening. Rain tapped softly against the windows. Sarah had prepared a special dinner. It wasn't a holiday. It wasn't a celebration. She simply wanted one evening together as a family. Everyone was present. Sarah was there. Ethan was there. Olivia was there. Everyone except Michael. The family waited. The food cooled. The clock continued moving. An hour passed. Then another. Nobody said much. They were used to this. That was the saddest part. Eventually, the front door opened. Michael walked inside while talking on his phone. He moved through the house without even noticing the family gathered around the table. Work had consumed his attention completely. When he finally entered the dining room, he seemed surprised by the tension in the room. Years of frustration had reached a breaking point. What began as another disappointing evening quickly became a confrontation that nobody could avoid. For the first time, Ethan expressed everything he had been carrying. He talked about the missed games. The forgotten events. The broken promises. The countless moments his father never showed up. Michael responded the only way he knew how. He pointed toward work. Toward responsibility. Toward sacrifice. But the words no longer worked. Not tonight. Because everyone in the room finally understood the truth. The family never asked him to sacrifice his presence. They never asked him to miss their lives. In a moment fueled by pride and frustration, Michael grabbed his keys. He headed toward the door. He believed leaving would prove a point. He believed his family would realize how much they depended on him. Instead, he unknowingly began destroying the very thing he had spent decades building. The door closed behind him. And silence filled the house. Sarah sat motionless. Olivia quietly cried. Ethan stared at the floor. Nobody chased after him. Nobody called him back. The damage had already been done. Days passed. Then weeks. Michael rented a luxury apartment downtown. The building overlooked the city skyline. The furniture was expensive. The view was beautiful. Everything looked impressive. Yet every evening felt strangely empty. At first, he enjoyed the freedom. No arguments. No responsibilities. No uncomfortable conversations. Only work. Only success. Only control. But eventually the silence became impossible to ignore. There were no family dinners. No laughter from the next room. No conversations about school. No birthdays to celebrate. No traditions. No memories. Only silence. The apartment began feeling less like a reward and more like a consequence. One evening, while scrolling through social media, he saw a photograph. Sarah, Ethan, Olivia, standing together at a family barbecue. They looked happy. Not perfect. Not carefree. But genuinely happy. Without him. The image stayed in his mind long after he put the phone down. For the first time, he felt something he had spent years avoiding. Loss. Real loss. Months continued passing. Life moved forward. Whether Michael participated or not. Ethan graduated from high school. Michael received an invitation. He intended to attend. But another business opportunity appeared. Another meeting. Another contract. Another excuse. And once again, he chose work. That evening, he saw graduation photos online. Ethan stood proudly in his cap and gown. Sarah smiled beside him. Olivia hugged her brother. The celebration looked beautiful. Yet one detail stood out more than anything else. Michael wasn't there. There was an empty space where a father should have been. And for the first time, the truth hit him with full force. He wasn't simply missing events. He was disappearing from his family's story. He was becoming irrelevant to their memories. And memories are where families truly live. If you're enjoying this story and believe that second chances matter, please subscribe to the second act. Every story on this channel reminds us that even the deepest mistakes can lead to powerful redemption. About a year after walking away, Michael attended a business conference in Denver. The event gathered successful entrepreneurs from across the country. People who had achieved extraordinary financial success. People who owned companies worth millions. People who seemed to have everything. Yet during conversations, Michael noticed something unexpected. When people spoke about what mattered most, nobody discussed profits. Nobody discussed contracts. Nobody discussed luxury lifestyles. Instead, they talked about family. They talked about their children. Their spouses. Their grandchildren. Their memories. The moments they cherished most. That realization stayed with Michael throughout the trip. Later that night, he sat alone in his hotel room. The city lights glowed outside the window. But for the first time in years, he wasn't thinking about business. He was thinking about everything he had lost. He finally asked himself a question he had avoided for years. What was the purpose of success if there was nobody left to share it with? Back home, Sarah continued rebuilding her life. She discovered strength she never knew she possessed. She volunteered. Made friends. Pursued interests she had neglected for years. Ethan started college. Olivia flourished in school. Together, they learned how to move forward. Without Michael. And that realization became almost unbearable. The world keeps moving. Families keep growing. Children keep becoming adults. Time keeps passing. Whether you're present or not. One evening, Michael drove past the family home. He didn't stop. He simply slowed down. The lights glowed warmly through the windows. Laughter drifted outside. The house felt alive. For several minutes, he sat in his car watching. Listening. Realizing he had become an outsider. A visitor to a life that once belonged to him. The realization broke something inside him. For the first time in years, he cried. Not because he lost money. Not because business struggled. Not because someone disappointed him. He cried because he finally understood the cost of his choices. The next morning, he called Sarah. His hands trembled. His voice felt uncertain. For years he had avoided responsibility. Now he could no longer run from it. When Sarah answered, he struggled to find the words. Eventually, he apologized. Not for one argument. Not for one decision. For years of absence. Years of neglect. Years of choosing everything except the people who loved him most. Sarah listened quietly. The apology mattered. But she knew words alone couldn't rebuild trust. Trust is earned slowly. One action at a time. One promise at a time. One choice at a time. Over the following months, Michael began showing up. He attended Olivia's activities. He called Ethan regularly. He listened more than he spoke. He stopped making excuses. He stopped blaming circumstances. He accepted responsibility. The process wasn't easy. Sometimes conversations felt awkward. Sometimes forgiveness felt distant. Sometimes progress felt invisible. But healing was happening. Slowly. Patiently. One Saturday, Ethan agreed to meet him for lunch. The conversation wasn't dramatic. There were no speeches. No emotional breakthroughs. Just honesty. For the first time, Michael truly listened to how his absence had affected his son. And for the first time, Ethan saw genuine regret in his father's eyes. It wasn't enough to erase the past. But it was enough to begin building a future. Months later, Michael attended one of Olivia's school performances. When she saw him in the audience, she looked surprised. Then relieved. Then happy. He had actually shown up. He had kept his word. Sometimes trust returns through grand gestures. More often, it returns through small promises kept consistently over time. The rebuilding continued. Slowly. Imperfectly. But steadily. Then Thanksgiving arrived. Nearly 2 years after Michael walked away. Sarah invited him to dinner. Not because everything was fixed. Not because the pain had disappeared. But because healing had created room for hope. The evening felt different. Lighter. Warmer. More genuine. Everyone laughed. Shared stories. Created new memories. And for the first time in years, Michael felt truly present. After dinner, he stood outside watching Ethan and Olivia laugh together. Sarah joined him. The cool autumn air filled the silence between them. Michael looked toward the house. Toward the people he nearly lost forever. And finally understood a truth that had taken years to learn. Success was never about wealth. Success was never about status. Success was never about being admired by strangers. Success was being present for the people who loved you. Success was showing up. Success was choosing family over pride. Success was understanding that time is the most valuable gift we can ever give another person. Because once time is gone, it never comes back. The journey wasn't over. Healing rarely happens all at once. But something had changed. Michael was no longer running. No longer hiding. No longer measuring his worth through business achievements alone. For the first time in many years, he felt hope. Real hope. The possibility of redemption. The possibility of rebuilding trust. The possibility of a second act. As the evening came to an end, he heard a voice call out from the porch. A simple word. Dad. A word he had once taken for granted. Now it felt priceless. He smiled and walked toward his family. And this time, he didn't walk away. Sometimes the biggest mistakes in life aren't dramatic decisions. They are small choices repeated over and over again. A missed dinner. A broken promise. A forgotten conversation. A moment when work becomes more important than family. A moment when pride becomes more important than love. Over time, those moments add up. And before we realize it, the people we love begin feeling like strangers. Michael thought success meant providing for his family. But he eventually learned that people need more than money. They need presence. They need attention. They need connection. They need love. Most importantly, they need time. Because time is the one thing no amount of success can buy back. The day Michael walked away, he believed he was escaping a problem. Instead, he was destroying the very thing he had spent his life trying to build. Thankfully, his story didn't end there. Because life sometimes offers second chances. Not to everyone. But to those willing to face their mistakes. To those willing to change. To those willing to fight for what truly matters. Sometimes the most important journey isn't becoming successful. It's finding your way back home. If this story touched your heart, please subscribe to the second act and join our community of viewers who believe in redemption, healing, and second chances. Here, broken stories find their voice. Lost people find hope. And every ending carries the possibility of a new beginning. Until next time, remember this. Success may build a house. But love builds a home. And no achievement in this world is worth losing the people waiting for you inside.